Teddy Covers. Teddy Covers joining us live from Las Vegas, Nevada, every morning here on the show. Teddy Covers, how are you doing on this Tuesday morning?
Well, I want to give you kudos for sure. You nailed the Monday Night Football last night. You're like, I don't want Cleveland. It's San Fran. That was a pretty one-sided game. And unfortunately for total bettors like myself who like the over, it was so one-sided. They left a whole bunch of points in the field and it never sniffed an over in the second half. So I'm lousy this morning. I'm not happy about Monday Night Football. How about you, Jimmy?
I didn't pull the trigger on the 5. I've been very angry about how I've handled the 49ers all year. I was on the over as well. So I was very angry last night. Very angry. I had the Cardinals on the -1 line, so that was a push. I lost on the Twins-Yankees over. I lost on the Leafs on the -1 line. So I lost a little over $500. I'm still in the black in October, barely. But I was very angry last night, so I'm ready to do some good work here. Barca fan saying, what is your record, Jimmy, in hockey this year so far? Could you just pop that up for Barca fan real quick? I'm trying to cut my sample size. I'm trying to cut my amount of bets down, so I have a very small amount of bets early in this year, and I'm going to every year I open up down 10 units, and I just can't keep making the same mistakes. All right, Teddy Covers, let's get to this playoff game. Verlander on 3 days rest. Rays with a bullpen day and didn't waste any of their big pieces in the bullpen yesterday. This total is at 7.5, and the Astros keep taking money. The Astros opened at Pinnacle minus. Oh, no. Sorry. Wow. There's been a move back to these Rays. Interesting. There's been a move back to these Rays. There's been a 13-cent move towards the Tampa Bay Rays while in the last 15 minutes. So at 9:48, so 8 minutes ago, a 13-cent move towards the Rays. So it's back to -227. Teddy Covers, Verlander on 3 days rest. Bullpen day for the Rays. Whom do you trust, if anyone?
Now, it's definitely worth noting that we've seen, Penny's a leading indicator sportsbook. So when Penny moves, the market hasn't moved down yet on Tampa, but you can anticipate that if Penny's move, I'm seeing 227 at Penny and -260 in some other spots, and that disparity won't last long. So if you like the Rays at the big plus price, that's when you want to bet this minute. If you like Houston, obviously you can wait. My gut reaction here, and I haven't pulled the trigger, if I had to play the game, I'd probably take the Rays +1.5 on the run line. You can get a plus price at that. I saw +125 earlier this morning, +120 widely available. In a game total at 7.5 on a day where we don't fully trust Verlander and with a Rays bullpen that we believe in, I'm expecting a tight game. I don't think Tampa goes without a fight. So to take a plus price with a team that can lose and still cash our ticket, I don't play the dog on the run line very often. This is one spot where I am interested in that wager. Again, I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but that's certainly the way I'm thinking early in the morning.
That's an interesting take on it that we haven't heard yet today. I'm going to stay off Astros Rays. I've got the futures on the Astros, and I'm just going to sit back and hope. But I can understand that breakdown. And breakdown makes a lot of sense. And Verlander has been so good, and he's so good in situations like this. But it is 3 days rest for the first time this season, and we just saw what Keuchel did with 3 days rest. He was getting hit very hard. He was fortunate to only allow 3 runs in that first 5. He was getting hit very, very hard. Okay, we got questions coming in. The first question, Teddy, is something I'd really love to hear, and I know we're a couple days away, so I'm not sure if you've figured out exactly how you're going to handle things, but it is about Thursday night football and this huge line with the Giants at New England. This total's already dropped 4 points from the opening, Teddy, from 46 down to 42. New England opened up at -15.5. It got to 17, but not at Pinnacle. Pinnacle never got 17. Pinnacle went from 15.5 to 16.5. So other books at 17, but not Pinnacle. So 16.5 New England Patriots favored by, and this total's dropped down to 42. Do you have any early feelings? Have you made a move yet? Will you make a move on the Thursday nighter?
Sure. Last thing on Verlander, by the way, it's definitely worth noting. It's not only short rest, it's also short turnaround second look where a team faced an opponent and they get to see him again in their next start. So that tends to be relatively a negative situation in general. And, Verlander obviously has pitched well in spots like this one. But the short turnaround second look with the 3 days rest makes me concerned about laying this price with Houston. When it comes to Thursday Night Football, I'll tell you flat out, I'm not going to play the game. I continue to look at New England as being a team that may well be an overvalued commodity once they start to step up in class. But they're just facing one bottom feeder after the next, and after the next, even the decent teams they face, they got them on the wrong week. The Steelers in week 1. So the Patriots' statistical profile is ridiculous right now, and that's going to stay ridiculous. Especially on the defensive side of the football. It's impressive. And it's going to result in higher lines on New England games than we've seen even in recent years, where the Patriots have been a point spread juggernaut. New England still without their, the fullback is key for that team. Still without their left tackle. They missed Gostkowski last week. I know Nugent got a couple, but he also, it's not a steady spot. And they went for it on 4th down in a spot where they would have kicked had Gostkowski been available. That's something absolutely worth noting for New England. And Brady on a short week, Brady, when you talk about a 42-year-old, how old's Brady? 42, 43, I don't even know how old he is. When you're talking about a quarterback on the wrong side of 40, the Thursday night games are tough. So I'm not laying with New England here. The Giants have been good dogs. They've been good road dogs. Cash take with them earlier in the season, obviously in the game at Tampa as a road dog. I think 7-1-1 their last 9 tries. But you also have a rookie quarterback against a coach that eats up rookie quarterbacks. It's not like the Giants are good, and defensively, again, they had the one game against Washington. That was Washington. Every other game this season, the Giants defense has looked vulnerable as it did last week. So I'm not going to get to the window necessarily backing a bad team against an elite team. The bad team's traveling. Sidewise, I'm not interested. I'm really not. Total-wise, again, you talked about how all the money's come on the under. Makes a ton of sense, except for when you look at the Giants' defense. And you're like, all right, well, maybe New England can run the football effectively, and then Brady will find guys open. And I would anticipate the Giants' game plan to be to try to chuck it around. And Daniel Jones, the Giants want to run. No question, but Barkley's not going to be available. I don't think Gallman's going to be available necessarily for the G-men, which means it's going to be a lot of Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones chucking it around. It can create big plays for both teams. It can also be a lot of incomplete passes with the clock stopping. So the initial lean under, I don't argue with all the under money, but if you're trying to make bets after a 4-point move and say, oh, this is the right side, you missed it. You got to find something else. So I doubt I get involved Thursday night. Interesting game, fascinating game, but not one that particularly intrigues me from it. This is not a pretty NFL card in general, Jimmy. I mean, normally by this time of the week, I've got a good handful of NFL games I'm interested in. This week, it's slim pickings for me in the NFL. I'll be happy if I find 2 bets this week. There's not a ton that I love in NFL.
It's going to be a fun game. I can totally understand why you would want to stay off of a 16-point spread on a Thursday nighter, so that makes a ton of sense. There's Ronnie Christie in the house joining us. We have questions coming in NCAA football. We've also had some early looks from Big Ragu and Drew Martin that I want to ask you about, so I'm excited about this spot. Let's go into question time right now. Torino saying college card much better than the NFL card. Our guy Elio Rodriguez, Top Set, has already asked the question, and we're going back to this NC State game. Let me pull up the market moves here at sportsbookreview.com. NCAA football. We talked about this NC State game yesterday, and Elio close to making a move on it. Let me pull it up and find out which game it is. It's the Thursday nighter, 107-108, Syracuse, NC State. NC State opening up a -3 now, 4.5, 1.5 point move towards them. This total opened up at 58 now, 56.5. Or 57 or 56, depending on where you shop. Very important to get the right number, and you can, because bookmaker at 56, bet online at 57. Teddy covers Syracuse, NC State, Thursday evening.
So we talked about it a little bit yesterday. I think I have a little bit of a stronger opinion today. I know this. Today I know which side I'm not betting. I'm not betting the Wolfpack in this ballgame. So it's a Syracuse or pass game for me. And again, NC State is a team that blew out East Carolina in their opener, and they haven't covered a point spread since. They lost the turnover battle against Ball State. They lost turnover battle against Florida State. Not a team that's creating turnovers. They created 2 turnovers against East Carolina. That's their high for the season. So it's not a defense that's making plays, and it's not an offense that's been able to move the football consistently enough to cover numbers. And there's a hidden factor for Syracuse. One thing I like to do work around this time of year, I like to do a little bit of special teams work. We talk so much about offense. We talk so much about defense. I don't know which teams are capable of winning the special team, the field position battle. Syracuse punter, number 2 in the nation in net punting. They've been winning the field position battle. And, of course, after that sluggish start, the offense had gotten clicking their last 2 ball games. I wouldn't be surprised if Syracuse hangs tough. I lean orange in this one. I've not pulled the trigger yet, but that's the way I'm looking right now.
Leaning orange early. There's my guy, Ant Fam, in the house. Ant, I am sorry, Ant, apologizing to me about last night. It is me that should be apologizing to you. I was angry at the end of the night, very angry that I hadn't backed the Niners, and my anger came out. It's all on me, not on you. You are a...
Were you human, Jimmy? Are you human now? Look, we all have our moments, man. We all do. And we deal with them in different ways. And when you're on air and having moments, or when you're on Twitter and having moments, sometimes it can get a little bit amusing. Certainly the next day, it can be one of these, oh, what did I do? But those are few and far between, but we all have them, Jimmy. We all do. So there's no need to apologize. I should apologize to you. I was the one that was talking about the over in the Yankees game yesterday. You're like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I'll bet it right now. No good.
Well, it's all on me on that Yankees. We're going to talk about angles nonstop every day, and that was an angle that I believed in. But Ant Fam is my guy. Ant Fam's my guy, so I apologize to Ant Fam. Okay, let's get back to work. Let's get back to work right now. Okay, so orange or nobody on Thursday night. And this Wednesday night game now a little over 24 hours away. We've seen it move from Louisiana, Lafayette to App State. We have a lot of guys who make money off of App State in our chat and want to continue doing so. They are now the favorite at some books. Pick them at other books. A lot of people want to back App State on the road here. What do you think of that look?
Yeah, and again, when you're talking about missing the number, you wanted App State. App State was available briefly at +3. All right, you missed a +3. All right, you get the +2. All right, get a +1. Now they're -1. These are the type of bets that if you didn't make it, you go, okay, I got to find something else. I certainly wouldn't talk you out of App State. They've been a point spread monster. And when we talk about the Raging Cajuns, again, their yardage numbers are through the roof. And the initial point spread was based on their yardage. They've outgained each of their last 4 opponents by 100 yards or more. And that includes a game where they were a dog and a game where they were, a 3-point favorite. So, when you see, and they covered as a 3-point favorite despite a -2 turnover margin. So, when you see teams that have those type of statistical profiles like the Raging Cajuns, they tend to take a fair bit of money. The fact that we're seeing App State money and hardcore App State money tells us 2 things. One, it tells us they are who we thought they were. And, coming into the season, we all thought App State was better than the Raging Cajuns. And the market's saying that same thing. Lafayette wasn't going to North Carolina and winning the way that App State is capable of doing. The other thing that the markets are saying about these 2 teams, the Raging Cajuns, as a 5-0 ATS team, there's not a big betting bandwagon there. Clearly, with all the money going the other direction. I'm expecting a back and forth game. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see the last team with the ball win in this one. It's not a game that I expect to bet.
And before I go into some of Ragu's looks and some of Drew Martin's looks, we have another question from Elio. Elio wondering about this spot. Rotation number 155, 156, South Carolina at Georgia. Georgia opening up at -24, now at -25 at Pinnacle. And the total opened at 54 and is now at 53 or 50, well, just 53 at Pinnacle, 52.5 everywhere else. South Carolina, Georgia. Teddy, what do you think here?
So I'm always, week in, week out, people ask me about the Georgia game, the Clemson game, the Alabama game. I really don't get involved much with the top 5 teams. Georgia so far this year, one week they cover, next week they don't. One week they cover, next week they don't. One week they cover, next week they don't. Alabama, game after game. And again, coming down to the wire, ATS. Clemson's been a bad point spread team. So the truly elite teams in college football, the betting markets are not sleeping on these teams. And Georgia's, shown that they're truly elite. And the statistical profile is super impressive, outgaining opponents by 233 yards per game. That's number 6 in the country. And a defense that's been downright dominant at times this season, outscoring foes by 32 points a game. I mean, it's a very, very impressive statistical profile for the Bulldogs. All that being said, if you want to talk about a team that has a really good track record as a feisty dog, South Carolina is that team. They've been remarkably, surprisingly good in that role for quite some time. And I know we're talking about a Frosh QB going up against an elite level defense. This isn't a game that I'm running to get to the window with South Carolina, but he asked me, where's the value here? The value's on the dog, not on the favorite.
Wow, there you go. That was a very, very interesting breakdown. Value on the dog. Okay, let's talk about some of Drew's looks here. And I'm going to work on getting rotation numbers for them. The first look on Drew's card. Now, these were leans. These were not plays that he pulled the trigger on and got to the window with. The first one is Texas State. Texas State at home against Louisiana Monroe. And it was more about just explaining why this Texas State team was only 3-point dogs at home. And that's what he was kind of breaking down, because a lot of people would think Louisiana Monroe could smash Texas State, but they're only 3-point dogs. And he understood, and he thought there was value with Texas State at home here on the late game Thursday night, rotation number 105, 106. What do you think of his look with Texas State?
Well, I mean, the issue with Texas State so far is they haven't been able to score. On the other hand, they're facing a defense that ranks, 123 in the country in points per game. So this might be the step down in class that Texas State needs in order to put up points in bunches. That being said, when we're talking about a matchup of two suspect defenses, I'm always going to want the offense that can score. And Monroe has the offense that can score. They've seen it. We've seen it repeatedly from this team. But again, I didn't like the game against Memphis from Monroe. I didn't like the enthusiasm wasn't there, and that concerns me as they hit the highway here. It's not a game I'm going to bet. But on the other hand, I wouldn't try to talk Drew out of a Texas State side here, even though I'm not convinced they can trade points all day with the Warhawks.
The next look that Drew was thinking about was on Friday night, Virginia, Miami. He was looking at the under, rotation number 109, 110 on Friday evening. Total opened at 46. It's now at 45. Miami lukewarm favorites here. He was looking at the under. What do you think of that spot?
So it really is a fascinating game. All right, Miami, falls behind by 5 touchdowns in the first half last week, or 4 touchdowns in the first half. They turned the ball over 5 times and then made a game of it after halftime. And, of course, you just look at the final score. Oh, the Hurricanes, they stink. They're not any good. Miami. Virginia couldn't move the football against this defense last year, not even a little bit. And I remember what happened when Virginia went to Notre Dame just 2 weeks ago, where they couldn't move the football and turned the ball over. Virginia's offense is not built to beat the better defenses. And I know Virginia Tech points in bunches last week. It wasn't marching up and down the field for touchdowns. It was all taking advantage of Miami mistakes. I don't know that Virginia is able to move the ball up and down here this week. And I would anticipate Miami coming through with a relatively conservative game plan. The under here makes a ton of sense for this better.
Oh, I like it. Okay. I'll put a little asterisk there. The next look, Drew is on one side and our guy Randy Lockhart on the other side. Drew likes Colorado State here on Friday evening, rotation number 111, 112 at -4 on the road. Randy Lockhart liking New Mexico +4 at home. Is there a side that you like in this game on Friday evening?
No. No. And you're asking bad teams, and I tried to ask a bad Colorado State team to do something for me last week, and I learned my lesson. And now, of course, we're talking about a Colorado State team that has one win on the season. Not a confident squad. They're playing with a backup quarterback. Their head coach is under fire. And defensively, let's be honest, this team's weak. Is this the type of team I'm excited about laying points with on the road? No. That being said, have they owned New Mexico? Yeah, they've owned New Mexico. Is this a step down in class after facing Arkansas, Toledo, Utah State, San Diego State the last 4 weeks? Absolutely it is. You know, is there anything we like about Bob Davies' squad this year? No. They haven't won a turnover battle since week 1, which is also, the last time they, I guess that was a push. But we've seen an offense turn the ball over consistently against good defenses, against even mediocre defenses. But they don't turn the ball over. They're not hopeless. And it's not like Colorado State's forcing turnovers in bunches. If I had to play it, it would probably be the Rams. But this is one I don't have to play. I'm going to leave it alone.
Going to leave it alone here. Rem Most letting us know that Koskinen confirmed for Edmonton. That surprises me. I wasn't sure when Tippett was going to use him, but the first game on the road trip surprises me and makes me even more confident in my Islanders look and bet that I bet this morning, -1.5. Thank you for letting me know, Rem. Much love to you. Okay, next up on this card that we want to talk about is this huge market move towards Memphis. Open -3, now 6.5. And Drew likes Temple at home at this price. Do you, or do you agree with that market move towards Memphis?
So it really is an interesting game, and that one stood out like a sore thumb over the last 24 hours. That's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, market mover in college football. There's things to like about this Memphis team against Temple, and we talked about it last week. Very similar concept with UCF and Cincinnati. I'm like, Cincy correlates with under. If Cincy's going to hang, this isn't going to be a game where UCF's offense is marched up and down the field. And obviously, since they won the game straight up, and the game stayed under despite a defensive score in that contest. This one feels to me the exact same way. Temple's not trading points, all right, with Memphis. Either Temple's going to stop Memphis, and it's going to be a low-scoring game, and Temple's going to cover, or Memphis is going to do what they do, and Brady White's going to make some throws, and the Owls' defense is going to have some difficulty, Temple's not going to be able to trade points to that team, and Memphis is going to get the number, but is going to get the money. But the concept here is not the stronger correlation is between Temple and under. If you're going to play the Owls here, you may want to put a little two-teamer in because I don't see a realistic scenario in which they're trading touchdowns with Memphis. They have to get the stops on D, and they have the capacity to do it. Although Memphis's defense is surprisingly good when it comes to the stats for the Tigers, and it surprised me. And I'm not I'm not a guy that makes a ton of bets based on stats, but I'm always looking at stats because I know that's where the markets are going to make their bets. There's a ton of statistical-based handicapping methods, and the majority of the wise guy moves, the sharp money that we talk about, has to do with statistical profiles. So whatever that's worth.
No, that is worth something. This is all about process, and enhancing our own individual processes. So this is great stuff. Next up on Drew's spot is the last lean he had. This is another market move going against him. He was interested in Arizona State at home against Washington State. Arizona State, this is rotation number 147, 148. Arizona State opening up at -2.5, now at -2 or -1.5. This total at 58, 58.5, or 59. What do you think of Drew backing Arizona State here?
It really is a fascinating game. So we remember what happened in Washington State's last 2 games. All right. First, they blew the 32-point second-half lead against UCLA. And then they went to Utah and were flat out no-shows in that ball game and blown off the line of scrimmage and blown off the ball. And the offense didn't work. And it was a pretty ugly loss for the Cougs. And then after the game, Leach called all of his players soft and weak and entitled and all the stuff that old people call young people today. And then Washington State went on a bye. And on the bye, they fired their defense coordinator. And now, what is this team coming out of the bye? Arizona State feisty dog, man. We love this team catching points. We've certainly seen them do very, very well away from home, both last year and this year, where they haven't lost a game by more than a touchdown. This year, they went to Michigan State and won. They went to Cal and won. And, played well enough to win both those ball games. We love that Sun Devils defense, spot on defense. The only time that they've been struggled all year was the Colorado game, which came after that physical Michigan State game. Of course, they've had a bye to prepare for this one too. Jeez, it's a fascinating game. It is a tough game for me. It is one I do like the spot for Wazoo. I do think they'll be able to have some success against an Arizona State defense. And again, the only offense they faced all year that's any good was Colorado, and Colorado beat them as 7.5-point favorites. Arizona State was 7.5-point favorites in that game at home, or 7-point favorites in that game at home. And this offense has the capacity to put up points in bunches. I think the effort will be there from Wazoo this week. But I'm not in a giant rush to step in front of the better defensive team in Arizona State. So it's not a game that right now I'm even close to the betting window with. We'll do a little more work on it. Then Tuesday's a work day for college football. And this is one game that I absolutely want to do some work on today, see if I can dig out something from Wazoo and how they're feeling out of their bye and how Herm Edwards' squad is feeling out of their bye as well.
Our guy Diesel Eugene says, "Oh my God, so excited. I'm never up in time for a live show in the morning." Welcome to the day, Diesel Eugene. Eddie Euler says Washington State, Arizona State lean over. What do you think about this total? Sorry, I don't have it in front. I believe what did I say? It was 58, 59. Yes, that opened at 58 and is now anywhere between 58 and 59. What do you think of Eddie Euler leaning towards the over?
It's another situation where I don't think Arizona State can trade points with Wazoo for 4 quarters. So if you like Arizona State, I think there's some correlation there with the under. If you like Washington State, I do think there's some correlation there with the over. That's my take. That's my first lean on that one, that there's definite correlation here, or at least a reasonable correlation between side and total. And of course, when we talk about these correlations, you're not allowed to bet quote unquote correlated parlays. You can't play the under 55 and the dog at plus 41. But these kind of parlays you can play all day. Little 2-teamer side and total on the same game. For most games, the books will let you do that. So you can get away with small correlated. Again, we're not going to get rich quick. It's going to pay 2.6 to 1. But that's better than laying 11 to win 10. I do look sometimes for these correlations where this team's not going to cover in a high-scoring game, and I don't think Arizona State can trade points with Wazoo. They've got to play a lower-scoring game if they're going to hang around.
Yeah, that's a very interesting breakdown. I'm looking forward to this stuff. Okay, let's keep rolling. We have questions coming in from our very own Rod Zawacki. First game he wants to hear what Teddy Covers thinks about is rotation number 135, 136, Maryland, Purdue. Maryland opening up at minus 4.5. They're now at 3.5 at Pinnacle. This total at 57, 57.5, or 58. Rod Zawacki liking Maryland here. Maryland as the road favorite at Purdue. What do you think of backing Maryland this weekend?
I am tempted, and that is the only way I would play the game. I don't like this Purdue team. I don't like anything about them. They've looked badly outclassed. And I mean, badly outclassed. And, it's not the Nevada game where they blew it at the end. TCU's not that good, and Purdue couldn't hang on the same field with that team. Minnesota's pretty good, but they're not elite. And don't be fooled by that 38-31 final score. Minnesota killed them in that game. Purdue had no chance, and they got some garbage points late. Two late touchdowns to make the final score look better than the game was. The Penn State game last week, they came in under the number. They had 104 yards of offense in that game. Purdue's really young. They're banged up. They're going through a lot of pains. And the Brom offense that worked so well his first time through the Big Ten now, and a couple years later, not fooling defenses quite the same way. So if I'm playing, I'll be betting against Purdue. The only question is whether you trust Maryland to do it 2 weeks in a row. And I know, they're 3 wins and they're all blowouts, Howard, Syracuse, and Rutgers. I don't know how much better Purdue is. I mean, Purdue's better than Howard and Rutgers. Purdue's not better than Syracuse. But the two losses, I mean, every Maryland game this year has been a right side or a wrong side. The Penn State loss, that was over early. And again, they gained 128 yards in that game and came back the next week and got 490. So it's not like Purdue has no chance to put up points against this defense because they had a bad offensive game last week. Lean favorite. I don't know that I bet it.
Lean favorite, and that makes sense back in Maryland against Purdue. Tomarino saying Purdue couldn't stop Minnesota at all. Defensive line has lots of injuries. I'd lean over, says Tomarino. Tomor, and that total sitting at 57 at Pinnacle. What do you think of taking the over in Maryland, Purdue?
So it's not a strong take. I don't know what Purdue's capable of doing right now on offense. I mean, the last 3 weeks they haven't been able to do much on either side of the football. And when you have a team that isn't scoring and is struggling to stop opponents, those aren't totals I necessarily want to get involved with because I don't know which of the two. When a team can score and is giving up points in bunches, yeah, I'll take over all day. Purdue's not scoring. They talk about the defensive line. The offensive line is no good either. The quarterback play hasn't been good. Where's the talent? Where's the skill position talent for Purdue? When they get 200 yards and 13 points against TCU at home and 7 points and 104 yards against Penn State, it's not an offense that I trust right now. And that means I'm not going to play the over. But it's not a defense that I trust. That means it's not going to play the under. So no action. Good luck. On that total. I'm sorry, I have no strong opinion.
Teddy not making a move on the total. The next game Rod Zawacki wants to ask you about is 205-206 rotation number. Wyoming at San Diego State. San Diego State opening up at -4.5, now -3.5. And Rod Zawacki agrees with that. He's on Wyoming at +3.5. What do you think about backing Wyoming on the road here?
So San Diego State, they didn't thoroughly annihilate Colorado State last week, but they impressed the hell out of me in that game. I mean, there wasn't anything the Rams were going to do. And Agnew played a pretty, Agnew. I think about this. Agnew was a real ham and egger as a quarterback. He had some nice throws in that game. He did, and it's not like Rocky Long's asking him to do a ton. I'm not convinced that Wyoming's going to be able to move the football a whole lot here. Against this defense. It feels like a low-scoring scrum, obviously, with a total under 40 in a college football game. It's going to be a low-scoring scrum. And certainly, when you're talking about taking more than a field goal in a game totaled in this range, the markets are going to look that way. Many bettors are going to look that way. I struggled to ask Wyoming to score this week. If you ask me, but both of these defenses are good. I think San Diego State's a little bit better. Both of these offenses are mediocre at best, but I think San Diego State's a little bit better. And those two edges, say that I don't want the dog here, especially with the money coming the other way. So not anything that I bet. At 3, I'd probably look at San Diego State, but I don't know that we get there.
All right. And the next look, Rod Zawacki was asking about number 165, rotation number 165. I don't know why I can't find it yet, but it is the Texas Tech game. We'll get it popped up here any second. There it is right there. 165, 166, Texas Tech, Baylor. Baylor opening up at -10.5. Pinnacle's taking it down to 9.5 and 10s across the board. Total at 58. And Rod Zawacki liking Texas Tech plus the points. What do you think of Texas Tech on the road here?
Boy, a pretty big strength of schedule disparity between these two teams. Texas Tech has faced the number 28th ranked schedule. Baylor, the 120th ranked schedule. I think so. I have very mixed feelings here. All right. I think Baylor is a little bit overvalued right now. The win over Iowa State, things broke right for them in that ball game. And then last week, they're getting a ton of credit for beating Kansas State. And if you've watched Kansas State stinks. Okay. We thought Kansas State was something after they beat Mississippi State. The last couple of weeks, last couple of games, it's very clear that, it's a big rebuilding job at K-State right now. So it's a team that, in a sense, maybe a little bit overvalued at this time. Texas Tech, heck of a game last week, with the backup QB knocking off Okie State, and they look good doing it. Maybe they do it again. Slightest of leans towards the dog here. But again, nothing that I've even come close to pulling the trigger on. And remember, from a strength of schedule standpoint, Red Raiders have been stepping up in class. Baylor, not so much. And, I don't know that Baylor's built to trade scores. If Texas Tech can move the ball against that defense, and it's a good Baylor defense, but if Texas Tech can hang around the line of scrimmage in that game and move the football, it's going to be fairly difficult for Baylor to cover this number.
Interesting. Texas Tech has the dog. And Eddie Euler leaning to the over in that Texas Tech-Baylor game. What do you think of the total?
I think over correlates with Texas Tech. But if you're betting Baylor games over this season, you haven't done real well so far. They've been playing one under after the next.
They have been. They have been. Great stuff with the chat, bringing in questions and taking a look. Remember this process. So we heard what Teddy liked on Monday, and this is a big 24, 48 hours for Teddy putting everything together, so I can't wait to have him again on the show Wednesday. You can catch him every morning here on Betting with the Bag. Rod Zawacki says, thanks so much, Teddy. Yeah, these guys love it when you break down their card individually, and it's been a lot of fun. You broke down Ron Crawford's card, and you gave him a lot of confidence on it I believe it was last week, and he went 6-2 on it. So it's nice. A lot of fun having you break down the individual cards of these cappers. Teddy Covers, thank you so much for joining us. Follow Teddy on Twitter. If you're a low bagger out there who hasn't, please do. Teddy_Covers. He's very fun, very active on Twitter. Big night of action for us, and then college football gets underway tomorrow evening for us. Teddy, thank you so much for joining us, my friend. Love having you on the show.
Hey, the pleasure's all mine. And thank you guys for filling up the chat, for giving me questions to answer. I'll do the best I can. I'll answer anything you got, even when I have no opinion. So cheers. Thank you. And we'll do it again tomorrow.